The sound of shattering glass filled the gallery as my mother swept her arm across the display table, sending my framed photographs crashing to the floor. The few remaining guests quickly dispersed, leaving only the sound of my mother's heavy breathing and my father's stern glare. "Ungrateful child," Mom is hissed, her perfectly manicured hands shaking with anger. "All we ask is for you to act rightly. Your brother needs that lake house more than you do. I am Alexandra, and this was meant to be my moment of success. My first photography exhibition showcasing images of my grandfather's cherished lake house through the seasons. Instead, it became another family dispute about my brother James and his constant demands. "The lake house is not yours to claim," I stated softly, watching my father's face flush an alarming red. "Grandfather left it to me for a reason." "Your brother has a family," Dad shouted, stepping over the broken glass to face me. "He has 3 children who need room to develop. What do you want it for? To take more of your absurd photographs." Those photographs had already sold for thousands of dollars each. They never paid attention. They never did. James was their favored son, the successful businessman with a perfect family. I was merely the artistic disappointment who refused to follow their expectations. "Sign the papers," Mom insisted, pulling a folder from her designer bag. "We have already prepared the transfer documents. Just sign them, and we can all move past this shame." I thought of the other folder in my messenger bag, the one holding the environmental assessment I commissioned 3 months ago, the one that would change everything. "No," I said firmly, meeting their shocked looks with calm determination. "The lake house remains mine." It is what Grandfather intended. Mom's hand reached out, knocking over another display stand. More glass broke, more memories ruined. Capturing each photograph required days of waiting for ideal light, perfect weather, and perfect moments, a year of effort erased in mere minutes. "Your grandfather did not know the path James would take," Father growled. "He now commands a real estate empire. He could develop that property, make it valuable, instead of allowing it to remain empty." They believed the lake house was vacant because they never visited. They never saw the wildlife sanctuary I established on the North Shore or the artist retreat programs I conducted each summer. They failed to realize that their successful son's real estate empire was founded on rapid gains and disregarded standards. James has not visited the lake house since Grandfather passed away. I carefully stepped around broken glass to salvage what photographs I could. He paid no attention until he saw the potential for condos. "Development is advancement," Mother snapped. "It is superior to your artistic pursuits. When will you mature and pursue something significant in life?" I almost found the irony amusing. They were unaware of the endangered species nesting on the property or the protected wetlands that prevented development. They had no knowledge of the state environmental protection order being finalized the next day. "I am doing something meaningful," I stated, picking up a partially damaged photo of a family of loons on the lake at sunrise. "It is simply not the kind of meaning you comprehend." "Enough." Father struck the wall with his hand, causing the remaining photos to shake. "Either you sign these documents tonight, or you are no longer part of this family. No more support, no more connections, nothing." I looked at them both. These people who spent years trying to shape me into their definition of success, who endorsed James's every venture while treating my accomplishments as mere hobbies, who were now destroying my work because they could not control me. "That is your decision," I said calmly, picking up my messenger bag. But my response remains no. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have a meeting with the State Environmental Protection Board tomorrow morning. I need some rest." Their expressions shifted from anger to confusion. The Environmental Protection Board. Mom's sons held a note of uncertainty for the first time. "What are you discussing?" I headed for the door, stepping carefully around the damage they had caused. "You will find out soon enough. Don't forget to tell James about the meeting. He should probably attend as well." As I walked into the cool evening air, I heard Mom's sharp voice. "Alexandra, come back here immediately." But I continued walking. They had spent years underestimating me, treating my passion as a passing interest, my dedication as a fleeting desire. Tomorrow they would learn exactly what I had been doing with that empty lake house. Tomorrow they would grasp why Grandfather had entrusted me with his legacy, and I possessed the photographs to prove every moment of it. The Environmental Protection Board meeting room was already half full when I arrived the next morning. I spotted James in his expensive suit, gathered with his development team, their heads focused on property maps that would soon be worthless. My parents sat nearby, glaring at me with intense disapproval. I took my seats quietly, placing my restored laptop in the folder of evidence on the table. Last night, after leaving the gallery, I had spent hours recovering the photographs from my backup drives, not for the exhibition, but for this moment. "This is absurd," James muttered loud enough for me to hear. "Some wildlife and flora cannot halt progress." "I have investors awaiting." The board members entered, led by Director Sarah Matthews, a stern woman I had worked with for months. She had shown particular interest in my documentation of the wetland ecosystem. "Good morning," Director Matthews began. "We are here to discuss the environmental assessment of the Lake Pine property and its implications for future development." I watched my brother's confident smirk disappear as I stood and connected my laptop to the projector. The first image filled the screen. A pair of endangered sandhill cranes nesting in the protected marshland. As you can see, I began speaking steadily. The property holds critical habitat for several protected species. I spent the last year documenting their presence and behavior patterns. More photos appeared. Rare orchids blooming in the wetlands, threatened fish species in the crystal clear waters, and even a family of otters that had made their home along the shoreline. Each image was dated, GPS tagged, and accompanied by detailed observation notes. "This was absurd," my father interrupted, standing up. "Those could be taken anywhere. Alexander has always been good at creating fantasies." Director Matthews raised an eyebrow. "Actually, Mr. Harrison, our own environmental scientists have verified every single one of these findings. Your daughter has provided exemplary documentation of a thriving ecosystem." I continued my presentation, revealing how the property served as a crucial wildlife corridor connecting two existing nature preserves. The development plans James had submitted would devastate this delicate balance. Furthermore, I pulled out my grandfather's original property documents. The land was specifically designated for conservation in my grandfather's will. I have his detailed notes about the property's ecological importance. James shot up from his chair. "That is not true. The will simply left her the property. There were no conditions." I smiled slightly, sliding the documents toward Director Matthews. "Actually, there were. Grandfather knew exactly what he was protecting. That is why he left it to me, because he knew I understood its true value." My mother's face had gone pale as she realized what was happening. All their plans, all their pressure, all their attempts to force me into compliance. None of it mattered. Based on these findings, Director Matthews announced that in accordance with state environmental protection laws, the Lake Pine property would be designated a protected wildlife sanctuary, with no development permitted. The room erupted. James's development team began frantically shuffling papers. My father demanded to speak to someone in charge, and my mother sat staring at me as if she had never seen me before. "You planned this?" It proved to be quite significant after all. 6 months following the Environmental Protection Board meeting, I stood on a lake house deck, watching researchers document a pair of sandhill cranes teaching their young to feed. My camera clicked softly, capturing the moment as morning mist lifted from the water. The property's transformation into an official wildlife sanctuary had been more successful than I had anticipated. Universities were sending graduate students for research projects. Furthermore, my photographs of the sanctuary's inhabitants gained national recognition. National Geographic even expressed interest in featuring the preservation story. Miss Harrison, one of the young researchers, approached me. She mentioned spotting the rare orchid species I had photographed the previous year, noting that it was spreading to new areas. I smiled, recalling how my parents had once considered this place empty and wasted. Now it teemed with life, purpose, and scientific importance. My phone buzzed with a text from James's wife, Kate. "The children missed the lake. Would it be all right to visit this weekend?" Just us, not James. Our family dynamics had changed dramatically since the board meeting. James had not spoken to me since his development plans failed. However, Kate had reached out, admitting she had always loved the lake house as it was. Her children, it turned out, shared my passion for wildlife photography. I replied immediately, texting back that the baby otters were starting to explore and to bring their cameras. My parents had taken longer to grasp their new reality. Last month, my mother had shown up unannounced, her car looking out of place among the researchers' practical vehicles. I asked her why she was there. As she watched me photograph a rare butterfly, she suggested I could have made millions from development deals. I responded, showing her the butterfly through my lens, explaining that this species only exists in a few places on Earth, and questioned its value. She paused, really examining the camera for the first time. It was beautiful, she admitted with reluctance. Your grandfather used to speak of things like this. I knew, I said softly. That is why he trusted me to safeguard them. As I reviewed my morning pictures, I heard another car approaching. Your father's familiar BMW stopped beside my cabin. He emerged slowly, looking uneasy in casual attire instead of his usual business suit. Alexandra, he said, walking over. Your mother mentioned you were giving a presentation today. I nodded, surprised he knew. The sanctuary's initial educational program for local schools. We teach children about conservation and wildlife photography. He shifted uncomfortably, observing the research equipment and camera arrangements. Your brother's youngest, Tommy. He cannot stop talking about the pictures you taught him to take. He says he wishes to be a wildlife photographer. He has a keen eye, I replied, recalling Tommy's excitement over capturing his first heron image. Would you like to see what we are working on? Your father hesitated, then nodded. I led him to the research station we established in the former boathouse. The walls were covered with my photographs, each accompanied by scientific data and conservation information. You did all of this? He asked, studying a sequence showing the complete life cycle of a rare frog species. This is what I have been doing while you thought I was wasting my time, I said quietly. This is what grandfather saw when he looked at this place. Your father was silent for a long time, looking at each photograph. Finally, he turned to me. I was wrong, he said. The words seemed to cost him considerable effort about this place, about your work. Your grandfather would be proud. The words I longed to hear for years landed softly like the morning mist on the lake. Would you like to stay for the presentation? I offered. The children would love to see their grandfather here. He nodded, and for the first time in years, I saw a genuine smile cross his face. That afternoon, as I watched Dad help Tommy adjust his camera settings to photograph a family of deer at the forest edge, I reflected on how things had shifted. The lake house had not only preserved wildlife, but had also begun to heal our family. James still refused to visit, too proud to acknowledge his past errors. However, his children visited often, learning to view the world with wonder instead of greed. Mom began a garden of native plants to attract butterflies, though she never admitted her deep enjoyment of it. And Dad was slowly discovering that success could be measured in ways beyond monetary gain. As the sun dipped over the lake, coloring the sky with hues no construction could rival, I took one final photograph. In it, my father and his grandchildren crouched quietly in the grass, cameras ready, observing nature unfold around them. It was not the future anyone had envisioned, but it was superior to anything we could have created. The lake house had become exactly what grandfather intended. Not merely a refuge for animals, but a place where people could learn to perceive the world differently. I sometimes realize that the most valuable aspects of life cannot be purchased, sold, or developed. They can only be kept safe, defended, and shared with those willing to open their eyes and truly see.